Okay guys, we've got a ton of Nintendo Switch 2 and gaming news that just happened that's starting to filter out to the interwebs, so I'm going to be going over some of the biggest things that I think that are interesting here. Now let's first start off with Square Enix overall. Square Enix, they announced their complete reboot and retooling of their game development, focusing on quality instead of quantity. We all know the massive amounts of games that were released back in 2022 where they just had game after game after game in the second half of that year and completely overloaded the schedule, and a lot of those games underperformed overall. So they want to cut back on that. They obviously had some issues when it comes to their biggest titles not being multi-platform, Final Fantasy, and not hitting quite the sales numbers that they would like to hit. So they ousted their president. They completely rebooted or started to reboot their gaming program, and now they are in the phase of doing that. Last year they detailed it. They talked about going multi-platform. They talked about focusing on quality, and now they're actually in that phase, that 3-year reboot plan. So shout outs to my man Stealth. He actually put out a nice graphic from the Square Enix investors meeting, and it states that Square Enix has announced that their 3-year reboot plan, with a focus on multi-platform development, they are in there. They're shifting from quantity to quality, and games managed under a single umbrella for more synergy and cohesion throughout the game. This is definitely a good thing, and Nintendo Switch 2 seems to be an important part of their strategy. Not even seems to be, it is, based off of this slide that we are going to check out. So enhance productivity by optimizing the development footprint in the digital entertainment DE segment. Establish a mid to long-term pipeline to achieve shift from quantity to quality. After the current 3-year midterm business plan, aiming to release major titles, mainly in key IP steadily. So this is very much like Capcom. Capcom's plan when they said that, hey, we're going to reboot everything a number of years ago, that completely turned around the fortunes of Capcom in the mid 2010s to the powerhouse that they are right now at this point. That's what they did. They focused on Resident Evil and Monster Hunter. Those were the two things that they did, and then the other IPs kind of got pushed aside, and they said, hey, look, Resident Evil, Monster Hunter, those are what we're going with, and we're going to really make sure that those are super high quality. So I can absolutely see Square Enix essentially doing the same thing here based off of what they've shown. They talked about Final Fantasy, they talked about Bravely Default, they talked about Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD Remake, which all will be released in 2025. All of those are on the Nintendo Switch 1 or Nintendo Switch 2 with Bravely Default HD Remaster, and they states that they plan to release multiple new titles and multi-platform titles as well. They also talked about the update for Final Fantasy XIV. They discussed, and this is where it's important with the Nintendo Switch 2, Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade. They are really prioritizing this game, and I do think that Japan, that's a huge thing here. It's going to be on a dedicated, real portable system for the first time overall, with the Switch being a hybrid. So that is going to be a huge launch for them in Japan and getting people ready to buy that, because by the time that that game comes out in Japan, which I'm thinking it's going to be the end of the year for 2025, the Nintendo Switch 2 should have a pretty good install base, and Square Enix can capitalize on the holiday sales season. So I do think that's why it's included in there for their TBD. And then they also said after that, they're going to have plans to release major titles, plans to release multiple titles on multiple platforms, plans to release major titles on a consistent basis. So once again, that Capcom plan where you have your Final Fantasy, you have your Kingdom Hearts. We're going to talk about that in just a bit. So that's essentially what they're doing here, and it completely makes sense. I think that this needed to happen with the sales issues that we saw with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth in addition to Final Fantasy 16. I do expect, based off of what they said for Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, that's going to be coming, of course, but then also Final Fantasy VII Rebirth to the Nintendo Switch 2 and the third game in the series as well. And I do think that Xbox will also get those games too. So Square Enix as rebooting things. They're releasing games in the main franchises overall. Dragon Quest, obviously, that's going to be a big one for them. Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD. Bravely Default, more of a smaller thing, but has been a million seller in the past and has a dedicated audience on Nintendo overall. And then, of course, Final Fantasy XIV, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Intergrade. As you can see, it's really just the main franchises going forward. And stuff like the Dio Field game and things like that. Probably Star Ocean, when it's not like a remake or a re-release or something that's going to be a bit smaller. That stuff's probably going to get pushed to the side. So we're going to see going forward. But they did give us a little treat. But before we get into that, for all those that are not subscribed, please make sure you hit that subscribe button if you enjoy the Nintendo Switch 2 content. Also hit that like button and click that notification bell to get my vids as soon as they drop. Now let's get into the other thing that Square Enix showed off here. And it's the first time in about 3 years. Kingdom Hearts 4. We finally have some new screenshots. We finally have something. This comes off the heels of them canceling the big mobile game that they were setting up, and they had tests for it. Yeah, it's canceled because, of course, it's canceled. Overall, these mobile games and stuff. Square Enix and their mobile history with their big IPs is not good when it comes to Final Fantasy and, of course, now Kingdom Hearts. So let's get into it here. Square Enix has released some new screenshots of Kingdom Hearts 4. This is the first look at the game since its initial announcement back in April of 2022. So 3 years of absolutely nothing. Quote, "We're currently working hard on Kingdom Hearts 4 and will continue pouring ourselves into the game's development," Square Enix said in a message. "We're dedicated to making this an experience that lives up to your expectations." The company continued, "We've seen how excited you are, and we are truly grateful from the bottom of our hearts. We are equally excited and can't wait to share more about Kingdom Hearts 4 when the time is right. Until then, we appreciate your patience. Thank you for your continued support. Platforms and a release date for Kingdom Hearts 4 have yet to be announced." I do feel that they announced the game way too early. Clearly, they wanted to give something to the fans, but it ended up backfiring. But yeah, now that we're 3 years in, it's okay. I think maybe we'll see some more next year and possibly a release by 2027. I think maybe 2027 would be good. If they just started in 2022 or right around then, that'd give them about 5 to 6 years of development, depending on where you think they started in that timeline. So I think that that would be okay for this type of game, this size of game, and to live up to people's expectations. But now here is where Square Enix can make a huge goodwill faith with the audience out there, especially on the Nintendo Switch side of things. We know that we got the cloud versions of all of the Kingdom Hearts games beforehand, and fans really disliked that, relying on streaming. It was not a great experience, but with the Nintendo Switch 2, such a huge spec bump, clearly they can take the game and get real, actual ports on the Nintendo Switch 2 because of the system that it is, the overhead that it provides, and you can get stuff like Kingdom Hearts 3 and even the bigger games so far. So I do think that this is an opportunity and a possibility with Kingdom Hearts 4 that they actually get this all right. Nintendo Switch 2 owners can get the full array of games on top of getting Kingdom Hearts 4, considering their multi-platform strategy and plan going forward. But I do feel things look to be back on track as they are clearing out some of the distractions with the mobile stuff and honing in on the development to get this game out and ready to go. So those are my thoughts on Kingdom Hearts 4 and what's happening there. Next up, we're going to be talking about the new feature of the Nintendo Switch 2 with the Joy-Con 2s and the Nintendo Switch 2 Pro Controller with the programmable back buttons that can be customized for each individual game. Nintendo on the Nintendo Today app showed this off, which you guys are seeing right here. And the cool thing is that it's accessed very fast through the quick settings menu. I love that. So you can easily get it up and going for different games. And the best part about it is that it will save whatever configuration that you have per each game, per each profile. So if somebody else is using your system on a different profile, it's not going to have the same map button settings for that game. If you guys are both playing Mario Kart World or if you're playing a different type of title, and Nintendo showed this off, it's actually pretty cool. It's called the GL and GR buttons. You can map it to whatever you want. The Joy-Con 2 and the charging grip also has that, which is included on there. You don't need the Nintendo Switch 2 Pro Controller to get those buttons. You'll have it on there as well. Plus, we also have a day one patch that's confirmed for Mario Kart World as well because it's version 1.1.0. So very good that Nintendo's just showing off some of the more little things and features of the Nintendo Switch 2 since the Nintendo Today app has gotten closer and closer to the release of it, but I think that this is going to be especially helpful for a game like Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. I've talked about it, swapping through different arts and having that as a customizable through the quick setting on there is going to be great, because I already use the system-wide profile feature that Nintendo offers on Switch 1, but there's some limitations with that in terms of everything, and it's not savable per each game. You have to kind of go back and do it from the system-wide menu thing, but this time it's going to be in the quick settings and it can change per each game, so it's going to be far more user-friendly overall, and it's going to be a big help for RPGs, action adventure games, the games that have a lot of button uses. This is going to be key for those type of games overall, because I did use button mapping on a lot of different RPGs that came out, especially Xenoblade games. Button mapping is really good. Plus that 60 frames per second patch for Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition that was found in the source code. Man, you combine it with some of the different stuff that's happening here. Switch 2 is going to be awesome to play for Nintendo Switch 1 games, depending on what game you're playing, or even if you're getting the enhanced game, or also features like this as well with the programmable back buttons and the quick settings just being so much easier to get in and get that done. So what do you guys think overall about the quick settings programmable buttons here? You guys are going to be taking advantage of it for the Nintendo Switch 2 on your controller? Let me know in the comment section. Now let's get into the release of the system, because a lot of you guys did miss out on getting a reservation for the Nintendo Switch 2, or you missed out on getting another one for a family member, a friend, whoever else, girlfriend, boyfriend, mom, dad, whatever the case is. My man Jake Randall actually put this up, and it's been revealed that there will be more units. So if you did not get a Nintendo Switch 2 pre-order, at least here in the US, there will be more. Now, if you're in Europe or in some other country, there might just be some available. The demand is lower in certain parts, so you're just going to have to check with your local retailers. But if you're here in the US and you want to go and try to get one at launch, Best Buy has officially confirmed that there will be extra Nintendo Switch 2 systems to purchase at their midnight launch in store for those who did not get a pre-order. Now, here's what they say exactly. Nintendo Switch 2 late night opening, Thursday, June 5th at 12:01 a.m. ET. Most stores will have limited inventory of systems, games, accessories, and a chance to receive a Nintendo collectible. So keep that in mind, guys. Could be a Nintendo collectible, maybe. There was some talk about that, but either way, the system is the most important thing here. So just check with your local Best Buy. It's 12:01 a.m. ET. So if you're on the West Coast, obviously that's going to be 9 p.m. PT, or Central, that's going to be 11 overall. So I think it's going to be pretty interesting to see exactly how many extras they're going to have, and if they go through all of those units. I do think at first some people were kind of like, oh man, the price is a situation or it's a problem. But after the Microsoft announcement, when it comes to the increase in the prices and how it looks like Sony's probably going to increase their price as well because of tariffs, I'm telling you, for the future, if Nintendo can hold steady at this $450, I think it's actually going to look pretty good in comparison to the other consoles on the market. So what do you guys think about that? You can let me know in the comment section. But now we're going to get to the final topic here, and this one's interesting because I do think that it could, I would say, lead to a Switch 2 version of a popular fighting game with Mortal Kombat 1 Definitive Edition out of nowhere is already out now for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series S and X, PC, and the Nintendo Switch. Warner Bros. Out of nowhere, once again, NetherRealm just said, hey, look, we got this Mortal Kombat 1 Definitive Edition. It's available. Everything that we've released so far pretty much is there. It's priced at $70 on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series S and X, and PC. But the Switch version's only $60, which is interesting because I think the Switch version originally launched at $70. It didn't launch at a discount. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section. So the fact that they're actually putting it lower is good. We know that the Switch version isn't as high quality as the Xbox and PlayStation and PC versions. It was pretty atrocious at launch due to some bugs and some other issues, but it ended up getting patched numerous times and is much better now at this point than it was then. Now, you get all of this stuff that I'm going to show you right here. There's a ton of different things here, even a Jean-Claude Van Damme skin for Johnny Cage, which is pretty cool. but all the different stuff in the Chaos Ring story, combat pack, cameo fighters, all that's there, so you can see that. But the interesting thing here is that could we see this come over to the Nintendo Switch 2 hot off the heels of Hogwarts Legacy actually getting a Nintendo Switch 2 upgrade path? So that's something that we're not seeing too much from the developers so far right now. Sega's, they're not doing that. There's some other developers that aren't doing upgrade paths outside of Nintendo. So hopefully Warner Bros. Has something here for us for people who bought Mortal Kombat 1 on the Nintendo Switch, and they can do something with this definitive edition to get it on the Nintendo Switch 2. Another thing is that looks like they're done with Mortal Kombat 1 if they're putting out the definitive edition now at this point, a couple years after launch. I think it's going to be 2 years. The game came out in 2023. So going on 2 years and they're pretty much already done, it looks like it, by having this complete edition out. I mean, I don't know. It looks like they're moving on to the next thing. So maybe we get an announcement for the next big Mortal Kombat game within the next couple of years here, or the next game that they've already been working on behind the scenes. So maybe it's something else. Maybe NetherRealms is working on a different type of game that they will announce at the end of the year or something. So we'll have to wait and see on that. So what do you guys think overall about everything that we discussed here with the big Nintendo Switch 2 news? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch 2 RPG content and more right here on screen. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.